this event taking place, and Amnesty International and Islamic Society working together. It hasn't happened before, so we're very happy about this, and hopefully there'll be having more events like this. I'd like to thank Amnesty International for the amazing work that they do and all the values that they stand up for, and it's truly inspiring the work that you do. I'd also like to thank Samira for the incredible perspective that she gave on the issue. It's truly on-the-ground information and a very good perspective on what's happening in Afghanistan. We've been asked to talk about women's rights in the Middle East and talk about the culture versus religion perspective of things. And as coming from the Islamic Society, I'll tackle the issue from an Islamic perspective. And the reason why it's important to tackle it from this angle is the fact that there are certain atrocities that women face in Muslim-majority countries, and it's not only that, it's also the fact that some of these crimes and some of the violations against women happen to take place under the name of Islam, and at many times oppression masquerades as religion. We also see it implied at many times in the international community and by the media that Islam is the source of these violations against women, and the common approach that's taken to the issue is often one of in order to find the solution, a solution cannot be found within an Islamic paradigm, and this is why it's important to tackle it from this issue, and the issue has been brought into light recently by the Malala case. Malala, for those who don't know, is a 15-year-old activist who was working for basically girls getting education, and she was recently shot. And again, it was done under the name of religion. Is Islam really the source of these problems? And truly, many people seem to think so. And to know about this, I will need to talk about women and Islam. But also, before that, I want to put everything in perspective, and I want to emphasize a couple of ideas. And the first one is the fact that that Islam is a global religion. There are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. This is somewhere between 1/5 to 1/4 of the population of the world. And there are different Muslims and living in different societies, and different societies have different cultures, and some of these cultures happen to be very close to Islam. Other cultures happen to be not a bit far from the teachings of Islam. So there are Muslims in the Arab countries, there are Muslim majorities in Southern Asian countries, there are also European Muslims, Russian Muslims, Chinese Muslims. Many people actually wouldn't realize the fact that there are more Muslims in China than there are in Saudi Arabia or Syria or Iran. So Islam is also the fastest growing religion. There are Muslim communities all over the world. So when we look about the issue of Muslim women, in certain Muslim majority countries, there are many factors that need to be looked at. There are many issues that we need to look at other than religion. And we can't really distinguish the issue from the broader social and political situation in certain countries. So one of the things that, for example, we need to pay attention to is the fact that with many Muslim majority countries, they are trying to defeat the post-colonial heritage. And the thing with post-colonial heritage is that one of the interesting features is that any culture that is under attack, that has been under attack, tends to recoil into a posture of protectiveness and reservation to ensure that it is safe from any outside influence and from any change. And there's very little evolution that takes place to any culture that is under attack. And we have certainly seen this happening, and what happens is that the cultural authenticity at certain times starts being measured by the extent to which the culture has remained unchanged since prior to the colonial era. So many times women become the barometer of this cultural authenticity, so the extent to which the status of women has not changed, for example, can be used to measure how people have have stuck to their culture, even sometimes in their perception, stuck to their religion. And this is not the case in all societies, obviously, but it is something that happens and something that we cannot ignore. So these are all important things to talk about, and now I'll move on to women in Islam and how to sort of put everything in perspective. So most Muslims will tell you that Islam has nothing to do with oppression against women, that these practices are completely against the teachings of Islam. And that contrary to modern perceptions of Islam as a backwards religion that infringes upon the rights of females, Islam has actually championed the rights of females 1,400 years ago. These were rights which were not enjoyed by the majority of women in most civilizations until the beginning of the last century. And this is true, but in case you don't believe me, I'll also back that with evidence. And when we want to judge anything about Islam, the best way to do that is to look at the authentic sources. And these are the Quran and the teachings of the final prophet, which is Muhammad, peace be upon him. And Muslims believe that the Quran is the final revelation from God, and it's preserved in Arabic, and that it's the primary reference point for any Muslim. No Muslim can disagree with the Quran. The Quran, second to the teachings of the Quran, are also teachings of Prophet Muhammad, who we believe is the final prophet of God, and he is a role model for all Muslims. So if you want to see what Islam has to say about any certain, that's why I'm mentioning this, to sort of understand, if you want to understand where Islam stands on certain issue, these are the sources to look back to. So the first thing that we can see when looking at certain, I'll quote a couple of passages. I actually have a long list of passages, so I have to sort of choose from them. The first thing we can see is the fact that in Islam, the idea that men and women are equal before God, spiritually equal. There's a verse that says, "I will not let the deed of any doer among you go to waste, male or female. You are both equal in that," and saying in that respect. So the deeds are equal, and it's not only that, it's also the idea that men and women are the protectors of one another. They enjoin good and forbid evil, and they keep up prayer. There's also another verse in the Quran that says that the believing men and believing women are allies of one another. And one of my favorites is that you are a garment to them and they are a garment to you. So this is the kind of tone and the kind of way that the gender issue is addressed in the Quran. And it's never one of someone being superior to the other, and the only time when superiority is talked about is by righteousness. So we have so there's a verse that says, for example, that basically righteousness is the only criteria upon anyone based on which anyone can be better than the other person. There is not race, not sex, nothing else of that sort. And this is not to say that, this is not to say that Islam is necessarily pro-women. Islam regards men and women as being the same, and the role model for all Muslims are actually, according to the Quran, are two women. And it's important to sort of understand this fundamental idea of equality. The status of mothers is also great in Islam. According to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, paradise is under the feet of the mother. And also the teachings of Islam have great emphasis on the rights of women. I'll go through some of the rights very quickly as well. So in terms of economical rights, 1,400 years ago, Muslim women had the right to inherit, to own and dispose of property and in earnings in whatever way they felt fit. This had nothing to do with whether the woman was married or not. A woman could independently enter into contracts, and she was given a separate financial identity. This is something that hasn't happened in most civilizations until slightly more than a century ago, and these are things which have existed in Muslim societies for more than 1,400 years. Other rights which Muslim women have had for a very long time are the rights. Islam gave women the right to vote, just like a man, the right to work outside of her home if she chooses to, the right to seek divorce and custody of their children. And actually the idea of divorce is one of the very important things that Islam allowed such a long time ago, because at societies where women have no safety, both things tend to go terribly wrong. And again, these are all issues which were not addressed in all major civilizations until very recently. So and now moving on from that, there's also something that I wasn't really planning on talking about, but I feel is very, but I will talk about it, is the hijab. And the reason why I decided to talk about the hijab is that while going through some material yesterday, I came across one study. It's conducted in the US, and it deals with the sort of impressions, the first words that come to people's minds when they see a woman in hijab. And these words include obsessed, oppressed, subservient, sad, abused, suppressed, forced, and mysterious. So it's very relevant to what we're discussing today. This is sort of the way that people tend to perceive a woman who's wearing hijab. And it's, people tend to look at women in the Middle East, for example, and the Muslim countries, and the immediate idea that tends to come to people's mind is the assumption that she is forced to do so by male. And the hijab has also become very linked to oppression. And some people might also be asking, well, if you're talking all about the equality of men and women, you're talking about the fact that men and women are the same, and so why do men not have to cover their hair, or why is it the fact that women have to dress differently than men? And again, it's to understand this, it's important to look back at the idea and the concept of equality in Islam. In Islam, men and women are equal, but equality is different from equity. We are not identical, and we are physically different, psychologically different, physiologically different. So men and women have different duties. Men, for example, have financial obligations. It is a duty of a man to cover all financial obligations. A woman can do so, a woman can work. She's not obliged to do so for obvious reasons. And again, when it comes to dress, men and women have to dress modestly. But in Islam, a woman, because we are physically different, we have to cover everything except for our face and our hair. And this, again, is part of the idea of liberation of women in Islam. A woman should be treated, a woman should be judged based on her intellect and not on her appearance. Women should not feel that to be recognized, they need to live up to a certain physical manifestation and live up to the alluring model that we see around us and that satisfies society. This completely contradicts this Islamic perspective on femininity. Women should be able to interact in society completely normally without their physical appearance having anything to do with it. Women's bodies should not be used to sell products and attract businesses. And so hijab should never really be looked at and thought of and be linked to oppression, as we see many people do. And yeah, so that's about women's rights in Islam. And now I'll move back to Muslim societies and what we see happening in Muslim societies today and why this is happening. When we look at Muslim countries, or some Muslim majority countries, not all of them, and not even these countries, it's not the majority, but we find some Muslim women deprived of some of their most basic rights, which were granted to them centuries ago. Amongst the most basic of these rights is the right to education, and there are places where illiteracy rates are extremely high for women, and especially in rural places. It's quite shocking. And this is extremely strange when we know that the first word that Muslims believe was revealed in the Quran is Iqra, which means to read. And this is a commandment for everybody. Females and males in Islam have to seek knowledge. It's mandatory. It's not just allowed. Islam demands us to be intellectually rigorous, and the Quran calls upon us to ponder and contemplate, and we are asked to use our intellect, and this is for both men and women. Seeking knowledge is mandatory for every Muslim, and that's the quote for the Prophet, peace be upon him. And this is not just what is taught in Islam, it's also what we see applied and lived by when we look at the early Muslim civilization, a time when Islamic teachings were really followed. So we find, for example, that Aisha, as the Muslims call her the mother of the believers, she is a reminder of this role that women played in society such a long time ago. She contributed like none other to Islamic heritage. She defended, in the name of Islam, the right to education and social and political action. She was a very well-respected scholar, and her knowledge was second to none. She used to teach scores of women and was consulted by all men in society. She used to give advice to Muslims on a wide breadth of topics, issues ranging from medicine to history and law. And she was also excellent in mathematics and used to give advice on how to divide inheritance and shares. And this is not only exclusive to her. There are many, many examples of women like that. So, for example, there's a woman called Islamic at the time of the Prophet who was a doctor and a physician, and this was encouraged by the Islamic teachings. She got many women together, used to teach them about the art of giving healthcare, and she used to treat the injured during war, and she did so and provide medical support, and she passed on her knowledge to many generations after that. There's Amr bint Abd al-Rahman, who also lived in the generation after the Prophet, the generation of the companions, and was a foremost scholar, used to give legal advice, advice on business transactions. So women at this time were consultants, they were doctors, they were teachers, they were writers and scholars, and Um, they were participating in political discussion. They were really participating in all spheres of life. And some of you might also know that the oldest university in the world, as like recognized by the Guinness World Record and UNESCO, was founded by a Muslim woman. It's Al-Qarawiyyin University in Morocco, and it was founded by Fatima al-Fihri, who wanted to do something good for her community, and it's the oldest degree-attaining university in the world. So how ironic is it that centuries later, women are becoming banned from these very centers of education that they helped create, and they are being denied in some places, in the name of Islam, the right to education. Islam originally liberated people from this backwards way of thinking, and Islam gave women her rights and her place in society. This was in the early medieval period. This was at the time when women in all civilizations were regarded as objects and had absolutely no rights. In Arabia, female children were buried alive, and the women were traded just like horses. They were married off as parts of business deals, and they could not inherit or own property. Women had absolutely no say in society. Women were displayed naked in front of the Kaaba and were recorded as tools and objects of enjoyment. This is not just the case with the Arabs, this was the case in all civilizations, and actually remained to be in many civilizations until recently. For example, in the Babylonian civilization, if a man committed murder, his wife was punished and put to death. In Arabia, actually, if a man dies, his son could inherit his wife's. So in the Greek civilization, a mythological person named Pandora was responsible for all evils in society, and she was a woman. In the Roman civilization, a man was permitted to kill his wife. So what Islam did to society and the sort of reform that took place in such a short period of time is truly incredible. Women went from that and being looked upon in that way to being teachers, to being respected and honored. And it is a complete shift that happened. It's actually very different even from the shift that has happened in society nowadays, because women have struggled a lot and fought a lot to get to the stage that they are in many of the in today's world. And this shift that happened was all about not blindly following culture, not blindly following the teaching, what your fathers were doing. This is actually again something that the Quran deals with. It's the verses which they say no to you. We're just going to follow what we found our fathers doing. And the Quran asks them, so what if your fathers had absolutely no intellect? Are you still going to follow them? This is not to say that culture is bad. Culture can bring us a lot of beautiful things, and Islam embraces diversity, and there are examples where culture and Islam have actually blended beautifully. So for example, in China, there are female-only mosques and female imams. And this is something that's still going on today and has been going on for more than 1,000 years. And this is an example of this Islamic values and teachings being beautifully preserved. But this is to say that when following culture, it's important to evaluate it. And if culture contradicts with the values that you believe in, it should not be followed. We find that some Muslims choose to abandon the teachings of Islam for their cultural practices. And some of the issues which most of the issues that all the issues that Muslim women face are purely cultural. I tackled, for example, about women not receiving education, and this is not caused by Islam. Issues such as forced marriages, honor killing, domestic violence, none of which are purely Muslim issues, by the way, but again, they're not caused by Islam. Islamically, a marriage is actually not valid if a woman is forced into it, and there's a hadith about that, the saying for the Prophet, when a woman came and she told the Prophet, my father forced me to get married, and he told her, well, either you're fine with it, or this marriage is basically invalid. So, how a woman can be actually forced to get married in the name of Islam is absolutely ridiculous. Again, for example, female genital mutilation is condemned by Islamic scholars, and again, it's a cultural practice. So we have to wonder where these people who are doing these things get these ideas from, and they do them in the name of Islam. Basically, when we look at the Muslim world, there's a lot of cultural clutter, there's a lot of baggage and a lot of prejudice. And sometimes the line between culture and religion becomes blurred. So despite the fact that Islam forbade these practices, they are practiced. And despite the fact that Islam gave women the right to vote, to inherit, to education, and to divorce in the 7th century, there are places where the cultural attitudes are hostile to these very basic rights. And this prejudice is obviously cloaked under, disguised under the cloak of religion. So what is the solution? How to tackle the issue? I can't give a very a proper solution, but here's some of the things which are worth mentioning. Is, as I said, the objective of Islam originally was reform and renewal and fixing certain illnesses and problems in society. Islam was never about just being static. Islam always, throughout Islamic history, there have been many processes of this process of renewal and reform. We have seen throughout Islamic history periods of decline in which the teachings of Islam were distancing themselves from the fundamentals of the faith, and during these periods there were always movements within society calling for a return to these original values in order to ensure that Islam is properly understood and properly implemented. And we definitely need this in our time, and it is happening. People are doing, there are many people educating people about the true teachings of Islam, and one of the quotes that's worth mentioning, one of the scholars who actually goes and talks to women, he's telling them, "O Muslim women, do not listen to those who are themselves misguided and who misguide others, who seek to deceive you by asking you to obey your husbands without asking you to first obey God and His Messenger. They say that a woman's felicity lies in her obedience to her husband. They only do so to fulfill their own selfish ends and to fulfill their wishes through you." Malala is also a beautiful example for this. She was an advocate. She was advocating girls getting education and the things. And she actually said herself as well, where exactly in the Quran does it say that girls shouldn't get married? That's one of the things that she said. And there are many examples like her, and there are many examples of amazing work that's being done. We should never have this idea that it's a matter of Islam versus these things taking place. It must also be understood that even in the communities where such contentious issues regarding women are taking place, it's not all black and white. There are millions of strong, independent women who are making a difference in society and contributing positively. It's not the picture that's being painted, sometimes it's very exaggerated, of women being oppressed. I'm from the Middle East, I'm Arab, I'm not oppressed. I'm not an exception to anything. Also when we look at Muslim countries, we find that there are many Muslim countries where women were head of states. These include Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, Turkey, Senegal, and in recent history. Women outnumber men in universities in most Arab countries. And in Saudi Arabia, women have owned 70% of the savings in the banks. So it's definitely not the image that's sometimes being painted. And there is much progress to do, but there are things which need to be done, and there are things that need to be done from both sides. So Muslim women should be encouraged to take the example of early Muslims. It's not a matter of progressing people, of liberating people from Islam or them being liberated despite of Islam. It's a matter of actually using Islam and using the values of Islam for this emancipation of women. Because within Islam are all these tools and ethics necessary for the full emancipation of women. And I'm not even saying Muslim women, I'm saying women in general, because the model that's offered for the liberation of women is one that all women could benefit from. And we see, for example, that 62% of the converts to Islam are actually women. And there are different things oppressing women in different societies. So the model that Islam gives women is one that all women could benefit from. And I'd like to end by saying that the issue of women's rights should not be conceived as purely a woman for issue. It's an issue for justice, and gender justice is a part of a broader struggle for justice in Islam, and justice that we all believe in. It's a responsibility for us to uphold these justices and to make sure that they are achieved. It's a responsibility for all of us. Thank you.